the question you're trying to ask?
It's a clown question, bro.
Next.
What's the question?
Next.
What's the question?
What else do you want to know?
Next question, man.
Next question.
Next question.
Your next question.
Next question.
Any question?
Next question.
Stupid ass questions.
That's a BS question, man.
Answer my question! The question, jerk!
On tag deadline day with free agency 6 days away, we're going to play Answer the Quarterback question with Dominique Foxworth. Here we go, Nick. With Matthew Stafford off the board, here is your first question. Should the Giants pivot to Aaron Rodgers? Yes or no?
Well, the Giants shouldn't, but I think that Brian Daboll and Joe Shane feel like they might need to. And I understand how bad the situation has gotten there, but I think the fact that the incentives are lined up for the coach and GM very differently from what's best for the organization. It seems like a familiar situation for the Giants where their incentives are not aligned for the coach and GMs to make what is the prudent decision for the long-term future of the team. And I think they could end up in a situation where they're going to get a short-term fix so they can prove to people that they deserve to keep their jobs. And we saw how much pressure the ownership put on them recently to make something happen this season when we all know that their roster is not ready to make a big run this season.
So, Graziano, he is suggesting, and others have, that the Giants need to win quickly, and the answer to that is Aaron Rodgers. What do you think of that?
He's suggesting that the Giants coach and GM need to hire Aaron Rodgers to save their job.
Right.
I guess we can go to Florham Park and see how Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas are enjoying their contract extensions that they got from the Jets because they brought in Aaron Rodgers. How does that make any sense? He's the guy you hire if you want to lose your job. We saw this the last couple of years. The entire Jets building got fired. I don't understand what honor. I mean, Mike McCarthy got fired. I don't understand how that makes it sound like he's the guy. That's a desperation move. But it's not the right one. I don't get it. If you're on thin ice, that is not the guy I would bring in.
Nick.
All right, we got like an hour and a half till we get to first take, so I can go ahead and say, you're right. I'm wrong. That's a bad idea. Don't go get Aaron Rodgers, okay? That's a very poor idea for your organization. But I do still believe that they're very desperate. And when I'm looking at all the quarterbacks that are available and all the decisions that they need to make in order to prove that they deserve to keep their job, it doesn't take long till you get to a point where you're convincing yourself that maybe we can do better with Aaron Rodgers than, I don't know, Tommy DeVito or whoever else is going to be available. So you're right. I'm wrong, but I can understand being desperate enough to make that move.
Yeah, look, I get the concept, right? It's not a great market. Like, once you miss out on Matthew Stafford, and if you can't get Sam Darnold, who had a great year, but it's his only great year, right? That now all of a sudden the list gets a little thin. Are you taking a chance on the upside of Justin Fields? Are you taking a chance there's something left with Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson? It's not a great landscape. I get it. It would be a desperate move for the Giants. I just don't know how they can look at what happened with the Jets the last couple of years and think it's going to work.
Tim, I look at it from the other side of this as well. I understand that Aaron redid his whole nice house in New Jersey there and would get to continue living in it. But the Giants are a team that were 26th in pass block win rate last year. Over the last 5 seasons, they're 30th in pass block win rate. So I'm not convinced that for a guy who's about to be 42 years old, that's a good option for him either.
No, it's a bad option. Look, it's also not an offense that, he's been steeped in for the vast majority of his career, like, was the case when we talked about some of the other places that he'd be connected to. He doesn't move well. And so, look, it's why my posture on him this entire time is, look, after the musical chairs, game is over at quarterback, what's left is where Aaron can go. So I understand what, like, hey, that's not the solution to saving your job. But if the solution to saving your job is Justin Fields, Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson, whomever it may be, look, Aaron Rodgers still ends up, in many cases, being the better selection than some of those guys, in terms of relying on them to save your job.
I just had an idea. Yes.
Nobody got fired in Cleveland or Pittsburgh last year.
No, I understand that. Well, no one ever
Well,
gets
let's say,
fired.
like
I'm just
Jameis
saying.
Winston threw
I'm just
13 touchdowns and 12
Just throwing it out
picks.
there.
That's not saving the job.
I'm just saying, like, they still have their jobs.
That's true, but Rodgers did play better than the quarterbacks in Pittsburgh or Cleveland last year. But I just had another idea. Because the way Tim just described it, Neek, is like a game of musical chairs, right? He has to wait until everyone else sits down and pick the chair that's left. Well, what doesn't happen in the game of musical chairs, but does happen in the NFL, is that at some point they add a chair you didn't expect.
Right.
And that happens in July or August when someone gets hurt and all of a sudden that team needs somebody. And that somebody could easily be a 41-year-old who can pick up any offense in 10 minutes and can show up and all of that stuff. Like, I think Rodgers may be better. If his options are like the Giants or Tennessee or something like that, he might be better off waiting, seeing what happens, wait till a team has an injury or something, and then assessing a situation there. What do you think of that, Neek?
Yeah, I get why you would convince yourself of that, but I've been moved all the way over to the Graziano side because if coaches care about distractions nearly as much as they say they do, Aaron Rodgers is not necessarily the answer because whether he is going to get in line and behave the way you expect him to or not, it doesn't matter. Like, the questions are going to come, the attention is going to come to an organization where he is, and he's not going to stop doing the media availabilities that end up resulting in news cycles for us week in and week out. So I think that's part of the problem. And to your point about picking up an offense, like, yeah, he's football smart enough to pick up an offense, but in the Jets, it became very clear, and in Green Bay, it became pretty clear that there's some things about playing quarterback that he's kind of rigid about. And I'm not sure that any team that doesn't have a stable front office and a stable head coach would want to welcome someone into their team like that. That could kind of destabilize it to some degree.
Okay, let me leave that there. I think there is such a team. I actually almost think I can convince Graziano of it, which would be one of my greatest feats yet.
I think I know where you're going.
We'll do that later in the hour. Meanwhile, we're talking about if I said Aaron Rodgers is a good fit with the New York Football Giants, believe it or not.
As much as I believe in the Easter Bunny, Grady, and hopefully kids aren't watching there at school. Understand this, Grady. At some point, and I'm talking to everybody who's listening right now, we have to get out of this mode where we continue to say Aaron Rodgers, say these big name players, and we remember them for what they were. Aaron Rodgers, sure, he can throw the football. He'll be able to throw the football until he's 50 years old. How invested is he in winning? I think Aaron Rodgers is more concerned about being on Pat McAfee on Tuesday than he is about being totally invested in the program. And that's not booger talking. Just look what he did last year. Not coming to minicamp, showing up to things when he wants to. It's not just about throwing a football. It's about being invested as a leader of the team, as the quarterback. So is he a good fit? Absolutely not. Can he still throw the football and get everybody in the back page on New York all riled up? Sure, but is Aaron Rodgers going to lead you to something in New York? I think he showed you and your team with the Jets. And I think if the Giants make this mistake, he'll show them also. I don't think he's a good fit, Greeny.
Yeah, first and foremost, I agree with this part of it. I don't agree. I do not think he's a good fit for the Giants, and I don't think they're a good fit for him. Period. New paragraph. As far as Rodgers is concerned, he brings up an interesting question, Dominique. Because you mentioned the idea of distractions earlier today with regards to Rodgers, and I think you and I both agree. Sometimes that's a catch-all phrase that teams in the NFL use sort of as an excuse. Or Aaron Rodgers is at a point in his life, clearly, where he has other interests besides football. There are things in his life that he's interested in. He thinks about a lot of other things. And, whatever it is one may think of the way he thinks of them, he clearly does. Can you do that and still be a championship quarterback? Could he go to Pittsburgh, because you and I agreed we kind of like that fit. Right. Could he go to Pittsburgh, still go on McAfee, still talk about whatever other things in life he wants to talk about, and be a great quarterback?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes, he can, but I think it's hard for us to predict that there's a level of commitment that's non-negotiable. There's no way for us to know whether he's going to have that level of commitment there or not. Of course, having outside interest is healthy for people to have. How much attention you pay to that is different for different players. So I think that Aaron Rodgers, part of the problem is his skill set. I think the biggest part of the problem is his skill set diminished some. And I think that everything else falls down around that. And I do think think that the new interest that he has, or it's not new interest, but the more outspoken he's been about his interest, that does create a situation where it gives us something to talk about when he's not playing well. But to be honest, all that really matters is if he can push off that Achilles and scramble and create plays and throw touchdown passes the way that he used to, then we all would, or at least the team that he was on, would deal with and accept whatever level of distractions come along with it. The problem is he doesn't play like that anymore.
That's the problem, right? I mean, look, we have a lot of fun with him on the show in terms of, you know, the stuff we criticize him for, especially the non-football stuff, and I think it's justified. But if you look at what happened with the Jets the last 2 years, it didn't work. And you can say whose fault that was or it wasn't, it didn't work. If you are the New York Giants, you are not a good football team. You're bringing in a quarterback who showed you the last couple of years he was not able to take a football team that wasn't good and elevate it to the point where it was. Can he take a football team that is good, like the Steelers, and elevate it to the point where it's you know, championship contender? Possibly. We don't know that. He's 41. We talk about how he played well last year. We put his numbers up there. There were some games where he played well. There were some games and there were stretches of the season where he very much didn't. There were games the Jets played and lost where he was a big part of the reason why they lost. He's 41. That inconsistency is not going to get better. You bring him in, you've got to make sure he's with your program, that he's bought in, and that you have a structure around him that can smooth out the inevitable bumps in the road that come with an older quarterback.
Booger, hold that thought. I can see you dying to jump in. I will get you in. I'm up against the bottom of the hour. Let me push it. And then there are the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mm-hmm. I feel like everything I've read from people like you tells me they're either going to bring back Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. You have another idea.
I mean, we talked about this before, but if Aaron Rodgers is going to play and there's a place for him, then Pittsburgh makes some degree of sense. Like, I don't think you bring him in to save your job if you're the Giants, right? Because we know for a fact he doesn't do that. We saw everyone with the Jets, literally everyone with the Jets, get fired last year. So he's not the guy, but in Pittsburgh, they don't get fired. They don't fire coaches.
Right.
Pittsburgh was already good last year. They were already in the playoffs. You know, can he, if they add pieces around him, like that's a place where he might have, you know, the respect for the franchise and the history and the head coach and all that kind of stuff that may have been lacking in other stops of his. So, yeah, I think if there's a spot for him out there that makes sense, that's the one.
Does it make sense to you, Dominique Foxworth?
Yeah, I mean, I think all these quarterbacks, as we talked about, are flawed. I think this makes the most sense of all the options, but I kind of think about these quarterbacks as what boxes do you need them to check for them to be successful? So stability, they have that. A good defense, they have that. A pretty good team that needs to grow, they have that. I don't know that they have a reliable number one receiver. They don't have great pass protection. They don't have a running game. So it's a match that is not necessarily made in heaven, but it's the best possible match, I think, for Aaron Rodgers. It may not be the best match for the Steelers, though. I think the Steelers probably would feel a little bit more comfortable with a more athletic quarterback who is not 41 years old.
Well, I mean, last year they decided to go with Russell Wilson, even though they had a more athletic quarterback who wasn't 41 years old in the building. So I'm not convinced about that one. And look, if they need another receiver, look, dare I say they could bring Devontae Adams with them, and all of a sudden
this would make that more likely.
You're putting that gang back together again.
Whoever the Steelers get at quarterback, young or old, they need to add other pieces on offense around it.
Alan Hahn watches every snap of Jets football in the same way that I do, so you saw every snap that Aaron Rodgers took with that team over the one season and one series.
One glorious Hard Knocks episode.
Before then, you tell me right now, is he someone's answer? Does he still have the ability, if it's Pittsburgh or wherever else it is he, you host a radio show in New York now, ESPN Radio, do the Giant fans want him?
No, like that's the problem, is that the Giants fans spent a lot of time laughing at Jets fans over the last couple of years, so they saw it, now the Jets fans are turning the tables on them. It feels like...
Steelers, does it make sense?
Well, Mike Tomlin, the longest tenured coach in the league, right?
Is it? I think he is currently, yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right. Like, if he wants that to end, I mean, this is what happens, right? We just heard Nick talk about all the things.
Tomlin fired.
He gets everybody fired. Nick just talked about all the things the Steelers don't have. That's the first thing Aaron Rodgers will tell everybody, is all the things that are not around me here, so don't blame me, it's not my fault. Like, these are the things we've learned about him at this stage of his career. Did he show you at the end of the year he still has something left? Yes, there's still something there, but where are you going when you do something like this? Is this a bridge to whatever you have next? I don't know. But again, Mike Tomlin, like, I'd be a little concerned if you made a move like that.
I'm told we're having massive technical issues with Booger. We're not clear if he can hear me or not. So Booger, if you can hear me, Do you like the idea of Aaron Rodgers to the Steelers?
No, I don't, Greeny. And Greeny, I'm going to put this in everybody's wheelhouse. You remember when Michael Jordan was with the Wizards? Like, he gave you a game or two where he gave you 35 or 40 points. And everybody's like, man, that's MJ. But overall, Michael Jordan with the Wizards was something we want to forget about. I think Aaron Rodgers will be the same way, Greeny. Yeah, he'll give you a game where you're like, man, is he going to be like the four-time MVP that he is? But overall, I think we got to realize, guys, Aaron Rodgers is kind of a quarterback that it's time to move on from. And I think if you're Mike Tomlin, here's what you should do in Pittsburgh. Sign Justin Fields. He's an athletic quarterback. And then figure out what your quarterback of the future is going to be. Sure, you swung and missed with Kenny Pickett. I think we all realized Kenny Pickett and the two gloves probably wasn't going to work in Pittsburgh. But you got to figure out what the quarterback of the future is going to be. Justin Fields will give you that opportunity and buy you some time. But at some point in Pittsburgh, they have to get the long-term solution. And if you don't think it's this year in the draft, then move on and worry about next year. Sign Justin Fields, let him play, and deal with the ramifications of whatever happens, even if that is a losing season.
Is that what you think is going to happen, Dan Graziano?
I do think that's the most likely outcome here, is that Justin Fields ends up back there. And yeah, they do consider it, he's not a finished product and may not be the long-term solution, but he also could be, and you're hedging, maybe you draft somebody in the middle round.
Nick, final word quickly, go.
Yeah, I think the arm talent on Aaron Rodgers is always going to be appealing. Some teams are going to want him. The challenge about him is he's rigid in the way that he wants to play. And I think you could look at his tape and say, if we could just get him to do this, it'll work out. We haven't really seen him be able to conform to new situations and new systems. And I think that is going to scare off a lot of teams. And given what I know about the Steelers historically, that's not the type of player that they want running their team. It's the type of player that they might have elsewhere, but it's not the type of player that they want at quarterback.
Guys, awesome. Booger hit him straight today. And speaking of golf, the final TGL match of the regular
How's it going, everybody? Villa Sports Network here. Just want to thank you guys for your support on the channel. Thank you guys for watching the video. Hope you all enjoyed it. Also want to kindly remind you to don't forget to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment on the video if you like as well. But regardless of the fact, thank you again for your support, and hope to see you on the next video.